Hello everyone and welcome to my recreation of the Biosyn research facility from the Jurassic World Dominion trailer, but in Prehistoric Kingdom. This was a really fun build, but also quite challenging because we have only one image for it to reference. I'm really happy with how it turned out though, so I'm excited to show you the progress and of course the end results. What I'm doing is I'm building only a segment of the outer edge of the facility, the outer wall, and then I'm going to be copying that and circling it around itself to make like the huge round structure of it. That is a really easy way in Prehistoric Kingdom to not just make a perfect circle, but to make a really big circular building with quite minimal effort, really. As you can see, I'm just building like a small section of it, and then that's just gonna get duplicated all the way around. And that way I was able to keep this build relatively short, in the sense that it took me about 2.5 hours to build the entire thing. Now you see me like building this one section. As I said, I'm using the reference image for the amount of horizontal beams that are there and the proportion of the concrete base and the height of the wall itself. It is a little bit difficult to see, of course, because we only have that one reference image. It's not like when you really zoom in, it's not the highest quality, but we can work with it. So what I did is, like, the structure has these beams going all the way around on the outside, and that's what I mimicked with these metal pieces. And the building has a bit of a curve to it, so that's what I'm doing right now by placing these beams outward a little bit in a slight curvature. I adjust this to be a little less curvy later on, but again, that is a bit difficult to see in the reference image. So, you know, we have to also sort of fill in the gaps of the genome ourselves with, I don't know, frog DNA and our own imagination, I guess. But this is like the base of it. This is the first section of it. And here we go. I'm copying it around, flipping it over with angle snap turned on, so it's at exactly 180 degrees turned around. And then you copy all of it, you duplicate all of it, and you start turning it around itself. And that way you can see you can make this huge structure in quite a short amount of time. Now, of course, this last segment didn't perfectly fit, so I had to shrink that down a little bit. And when you shrink it, you see that the angles sort of get messed up because you have so many different items. But you can fix that, and it pretty much blends in invisibly in the end. You have a slightly shorter section on either side. Now, of course, the building, the facility isn't fully enclosed. It's open in the back, so we're deleting quite a few sections to have that opening, as we see in our reference image. Now, the next part, this build is basically two giant circles. The next part is the inner circle, so the inside of the building, like this inner courtyard, I suppose. We don't really know a lot of the details that's in there. I see a lot of trees and some sort of structure or path work. I'm not quite sure. That is something I'm probably gonna make like a V2 of this, like a second version, and improve it with new reference images that we get once the movie comes out. But this is the inner wall. So surrounding that courtyard, it is white, or a warm toned white, and it has orange lights on it. I think they're lights. I don't think they're windows, because they're so uniformly lit and they're so very orange that, yeah, I don't think that they're windows that with light from the inside coming out. I think they're actual lights. So I put 4 lights on each section. And I'm going to be fiddling with that later because there are more lights on the top row than the bottom row. But that's all near the end of the build. Now, what I also think I see is that there's only like a top half that's white and the bottom half is, I think, black and a little bit receded. So that's what I imitated over there. And now it's just the same trick as we did with the outside, and it's making a circle, turning it around itself. And now I'm putting it into position. And what's really easy is you can just select all of the pieces and rescale them to make sure that they fit. You can raise them up a little bit so the roofs are at the same level. and presto, you have basically the shell of the building done. And just like what we did with the outer shell, we have to delete quite a bit of the inner segments so we have that opening of the building. Now the next part is we're gonna close up the roof so we don't get any leaks. And what I did was I recolored some wood texture green, just so when we cover it with foliage, no concrete is gonna show through. If it does, we'll just see the dark green undertone of these green wooden tiles that I placed down. And here we go, just a lot of foliage. I do really love this design element of having foliage at the top. It's something I've done in earlier Prehistoric Kingdom builds myself as well. I just think it looks really, really cool. And it's also just a super, super easy way to create a roof for your builds in a game like this, because it's, as you saw with the tiles, it might be a little bit difficult to make those fit perfectly, especially with a complicated shape like this. But when you go with foliage, you can just go crazy, as you see right now. And I did a mix of two plants because it just looks a little bit more natural, and we see that in the movie as well. Now, what I didn't anticipate was when I raised the ground, some of the foliage sunk down for whatever reason. But I do think that the ground on the inside of the building is a little higher than the outside, so I had to do that. The foliage I put back in. Now we're working on a really curious part of the build, and that is this sort of mouth, this opening with the river coming through. I don't know yet what the purpose of that is. I'm really excited to see what it's for, what its purpose is when we see it in Dominion. Is it just sort of like a hydrodynamic dam or hydro-powered dam thing? I don't know. Is it using the force of the river to power stuff? Or is it an opening for marine reptiles? We don't know yet, but I will be very curious to see how that comes into play in the movie itself. So this is, I think, the funnest part of the build, because there's quite a bit of detail going on here and it's different from the rest of the outside. So I feel like this is really where the build started to become fun for me, and I really started to see how it was gonna turn out. So really what I'm just doing is I'm trying to imitate what I see in the image as best as I can, with, still certain limitations that even a game with as much freedom as Prehistoric Kingdom imposes. There's always some limitations. You always have to be a little bit creative and a little bit forgiving for yourself for not getting it like absolutely perfect. And I hope that you guys can forgive me for that as well. Like I said, I do want to make a V2 of this build and improve on it once we see more of it in Jurassic World Dominion. And it's mind-boggling to think that the movie is less than a month away at this point. It feels like yesterday when it was being announced that it was being delayed by a full year because of COVID. So it's absolutely amazing that we're finally going to be seeing it in less than a month at this point. I am so excited for it. I'm so curious, and I'm really hopeful, and actually I'm confident that we're going to get some really awesome dinosaur scenes in that movie. Okay, so the next part of the process is building like these, I don't know what to even call them, like these arms that stretch out and sort of embrace the river for a little bit. So that's what I'm recreating here. Now the beauty of this is that you only have to build it once and then flip it, and I'll show you how that works in a little bit, but I'm just building one arm using the concrete pieces, which are really fantastic for this build, and that angled piece worked out really well as well. And here I'm just selecting all of it, and as I said, we're gonna flip it. So I duplicated it, and there you go. I basically made a mirror image of it, and that's just really helpful so you don't have to, spend literally twice as much time making a mirror image copy of what you just built. It would have been much smarter if I had also already added all of the details on the one arm and then flipped it, but then I would have also been stuck with having to select a lot of individual pieces to duplicate and flip over. So, it's always a compromise. At the end of the day, it is a lot of work. You know, some cheats are great and they're very helpful, but at the end of the day, it is very finicky. You do have to put in the work and you have to be patient and spend a little bit of time. However, that being said, I do want to give you like a get out of jail for free card. If you start to lose inspiration, if you start to lose motivation, give yourself permission to either stop and think to yourself, hey, this is good, I'm proud of this, I'm happy with this, or just put it down for a little bit. Don't force yourself to keep building. That's something I am personally experiencing in Prehistoric Kingdom. I love building in this game, but at the same time, it is such a commitment of time that inspiration and motivation, they just sort of dwindle naturally over time. And I really struggled allowing myself to stop a build. But just stop. Please, just stop. Come back to it later. It's fine. So yeah, I made the arms. There was like this little cross pattern on them. There is a railing on the top section over there, so I'm adding that here. There's also like some, I don't know what to call it, like machinery that's up there. So I use the props that are already made in the game for that. That's just because the image quality is so low that you don't really see what all of it is. You just see that there's some shapes up there. So that's what I mimicked over here and just used sort of my own imagination again, my own frog DNA to fill in the gaps and make it look detailed and realistic without actually being able to accurately see in all of its glorious detail what is going on over there. Now I think this is the last part of the arm, which is like it curves towards the building a little bit better, so that's what I replicated right there, and of course also flipped it on the other side. Now the building it's rounded but made of these segments, and the segments are separated from one another with vertical beams, which also there's one straight beam and one beam that sort of follows the curve of the building itself. So that's what I'm doing over here. I built it a little bit away from the building so I could easily grab the pieces and turn them around and stuff like that, and then just duplicate them over. This rounded bit is a little bit more rounded than my actual facade of the building, but I think it works out. The curvature of that outer beam sort of enhances the curvature of the building, even though it doesn't perfectly match. And it's just another great detail to make your building look more realistic and of course make it look more like the reference image. But there's also another detail on the side of the building, and that's like pipes or something. I mean, it's a facility, so obviously it has some utilitarian elements to it. And this was really fun to recreate because at the end of the day, I feel like I said that a lot in this video, at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, it is a very monotonous build, really. It's just the same section over and over, curved around itself. So it was fun that we do get this bit of detail to break up that enormous side wall of it. And it was, it was piping of some sort. And it's 7 of these small ones going from all the way to the top to the bottom. So it was just a matter of creating one and then duplicating it until we had 7. I actually counted. And then on the other side of that segment, you also have these 2 big flatter pipes. So I just copied those narrow pipes and stretched them out using the rescaling tool, which is absolutely brilliant. I think that was a stroke of genius on the part of the Prehistoric Kingdom developers to add that rescaling tool in it, because damn, that was really nice. I was happy that I was able to make that work because there wasn't a appropriate metal piece for it in the game itself, in its selection. Now, I actually built this, I think, on the 4th section away from the quote-unquote mouth. later, as I was taking screenshots, I realized that those pipes were too far away from the mouth. I'm just gonna call it that from now on, you get what I mean. So after taking screenshots, I realized, hey, this is not right, so I moved them over one section, so they were on the third section away from the mouth. I don't show that in the build, I'd already stopped recording, but you can see that in the end result that I moved them a little bit closer because that was more true to the reference image. Now what we also see in the reference image are these like support structures at the, I want to say at the back of the building, like where the building has the opening. There are like these quite elaborate support structures. I don't know what they're for necessarily, but of course we had to mimic them, so that's what I'm building right here. And again, I built it away from the building itself, just so I could easily grab all of the pieces, move them around, not lose anything. And I just had like that one tall vertical beam over there, was just so I knew exactly how tall it had to be. And then it's just a case of moving it over. Now, in Prehistoric Kingdom, the alpha version, you used to be able to just drag the cursor and then create a rectangle or a square, and it would select everything within that rectangle or square. For some reason, it doesn't work that way in the early access version. I do hope that that is coming back, because it is much easier to select a couple of pieces that way, as opposed to individually, you know, holding shift and clicking on all of them. Now in the reference image, we see that the back beams that I'm working on right now, they don't go to the ground, they actually go back to the concrete base of the building. So I'm readjusting them here to make them fit right. And then I'm just copying them over and applying them to the other support structures that I made. You really have to make the most of the copy feature in this game if you want to build efficiently and keep it fun for yourself. Now here we are on the roof, and this is definitely where I started to suffer from a loss of motivation. So it's not a perfect replica of what we actually see on the roof, on the reference image. I did some of the pipe layout that we see, and I created what I think might be solar panels that are on the top. So I used the wall piece and recolored them a dark blue because I really think that they convincingly look like solar panels stretched out like that. But yeah, like I said, this is where I started to suffer from loss of motivation. So I didn't recreate every little detail of the roof entirely perfectly. Again, I hope that you'll forgive me for that. And again, stay tuned, because we will be revisiting this and perfecting it later when we have more information and I have renewed motivation to actually make sure that it's completely picture accurate. On the interior of the building, there's also some sort of architectural design element, or possibly a support of some sort. It looks to be concrete, so I recreated it using concrete. And I think that's like the final detail that I added to the interior of the build. And then the rest of it, as I referenced before, there are more lights on the top row than there are on the bottom. But because of how I built it, obviously the amount was the same. So I just deleted a couple of lights from the bottom. And this is the final building element closing up the ends of the building. I didn't add any detail to this because we don't see what it looks like. And as I said, there will be a V2 of this, so I didn't want to waste time on details that were going to get corrected later. And here is the end result, the Biosyn research facility in Prehistoric Kingdom. I really hope that you enjoyed this build and that it gave you some inspiration for your own future builds in Prehistoric Kingdom, and that you're just as hyped as me for Jurassic World Dominion. If you enjoyed the build, give it a like, and if you want to see V2 and other awesome dinosaur park game builds, then subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the game.